Thanks very much, Shakun. Well, not surprisingly here in Washington, the Taliban strike was a reminder that the security situation in Afghanistan remains fragile. The suicide attack in Kabul on Saturday killed the most number of Americans in any ground attack during the 10-year-long war. Other major attacks against U.S. troops include one in December 2009 when 12 CIA operatives were killed by a suicide bomber at a U.S. Army base in eastern Afghanistan. Then last April, a man described as a rogue Afghan pilot shot and killed 9 Americans, most of them U.S. airmen, at the Kabul air base. And last August, 30 American soldiers, many of them special forces, died when a helicopter was shot down, according to the Pentagon. 8 Afghan soldiers aboard also died. So far this year, 378 American military personnel have died in Afghanistan compared to a record 499 who were killed in 2010. Well, joining me is Michael Shank. He's the Director of U.S. Operations for the Institute of Economics and Peace. That's a non-profit research center. He's also a PhD student at George Mason University School for Conflict Analysis and Resolution. Thank you very much for being with us, Mr. Shank. Given all of this, this long description that I've talked about and the attack on Saturday, how should the United States be re-evaluating the security situation in Afghanistan, particularly in Kabul?
Well, clearly it's not as secure as the Pentagon would like us to believe. The Pentagon report this week saying it's more secure. That's not the case. In August, the British consul was attacked. In September, the U.S. Embassy was attacked. Now the U.S. NATO envoy attacked. I've suggested 3 strategies that need to be immediately reevaluated. One, on the defense strategy. I think from Karzai on down to the everyday Afghan, they're very frustrated with what Petraeus brought in, and now General Allen is continuing, which is very, very aggressive special forces raids, night raids, air raids, targeted assassinations, drone strikes. That has all increased 60 to 80% since McChrystal was in power. So 2, they've introduced this Afghan local police, which is essentially, I mean, it's not a formal body, it's not a formal local police force. It's what they did in Iraq, which is paying off essentially bribes in money and arms to anyone that will become an ally in the fight against the insurgency and the opposition.
But after 10 years, why is security still a major issue?
Well, in short, because Afghans aren't seeing an improvement in their lifestyle. They're not seeing increased economic security. They're not seeing increased physical security. They're not getting better access to medical care, to schools. Everything that the U.S. promised at the very beginning, 10 years ago, they haven't seen. In fact, it's getting worse. UN report in September showing civilian attacks at the highest ever in the 10-year war. So Afghans from Karzai on down to the person on the street in Kabul aren't seeing improved security.
Right, you mentioned that Pentagon report which came out on Tuesday. Basically, the gist of that was that the violence has been reversed. I mean, this is what the Pentagon has been putting out and telling us, and basically things are as good as they've ever been. Why is the Defense Department then in denial about the security situation?
Well, I think the Pentagon has a clear motivation in Washington to spread the word that things are going well. Why? Because one, there's a drawdown that's beginning now, and by the end of next year, you can see 35,000 troops down. But also in Congress, cuts are happening across the board, from military cuts to development cuts. So they're trying to make the case for kind of continued engagement. Plus, there's been some bad news. You know, Rabbani was assassinated. He ran the peace talks. A lot of bad news coming out of Afghanistan, so they want to pitch good news.
All right, Michael Shank, thank you very much for joining us here on Al Jazeera.